So Maddie Healy was just a guest on the Doom Scroll podcast, and this was a super interesting conversation, almost a 3-hour conversation. And they went into internet culture, they went into current day art, and something before I get into the new album details that he kind of touches on, and some stuff that regards to the 1975's future and just like what the next era of the 1975 is going to look like. I want to touch a little bit on the stuff he talked about with the last show. One of the most fascinating things for me about the 1975 was their last tour, and I did a whole video breakdown of the At Their Very Best tour and the Still At Their Very Best tour, because there were so many interesting concepts. So I just gotta say, I was super cheesed to like see Maddie talk in depth about that show, just because he was kind of letting the performances speak for themselves. He didn't do many interviews after he was doing the shows, so it was kind of interesting to see more of a concrete reasons for some of the stuff in that show, because it was a very abstract show and you kind of had to think about stuff. So seeing Maddie talk about this stuff just had me really genuinely engaged in this conversation. And actually, before I get into the new album details, there's some things that Maddie maybe teased, some future projects that he might work on. He posted on his Instagram story right after the interview aired, screenshotting a comment that said, "God, I wish I could have an entire book about Maddie and the internet." And then he put the eyes emoji. So this obviously indicates that he's writing a book about the internet and that kind of stuff, and all the stuff he kind of dove into with this conversation, because Maddie is obviously very interested in the internet culture, because he's made like a couple albums about that, and he's made entire shows about that. So it'd be really interesting to see a book from him and more insight, just like this conversation with the Doom Scroll podcast. And also he teased that, or he didn't tease, but he said he's been working on like a documentary about the band for like 10 years, and like they've constantly been recording their stuff. So that's very interesting. He said it might not ever see the light of day, but I think that's important to mention. And it's cool that they filmed like almost everything they've done, and they have so much footage that they could release and maybe one day use for like a movie. So let's get into the new album details. Writing wise, he said that he's not going to be touching on anything regarding the last year of controversy. He said maybe he might throw a little line in there too, but overall this album is not going to reflect anything that's happened over the last like year regarding his public persona. It's going to be more just like him as a person and him as an individual, instead of like he was dating Taylor Swift. He said this on the Adam Friedland show. This is his side of it. It's not going to be any of that. He's not going to touch on any of the controversies, which I think is awesome. Like if Maddie was to talk about like, oh, this happened, I'm telling my side of the story, like it may not stand the test of time as a piece of art. Like if you look at that art in 20 years, it's just going to be like, huh, what is he talking about? I don't really care. Like this doesn't impact me. So I think it's great that he's going to take a different approach to the album than what people might expect him to do, because, even myself included, like when the Brat remix song, I Might Say Something Stupid, got announced, I was just like, okay, he's probably going to really touch on, everything that's happened in the past year. And he did a little bit, but, I'm glad he's not going to be taking that approach for the next album. And he's obviously still very interested in referencing culture, because, we've had that on almost every single 1975 album. He's constantly referencing culture, and I think that's going to continue for this next album. And so that's writing-wise, super interesting. But production-wise, he mentioned that he has a new rule in the studio regarding the band, that nobody can pull up Spotify to reference another song that they want to kind of make and emulate, which I think is cool. Like this could really make for some unique sounds. He said that he wants to continue the art pop sound that they usually do, which I would expect no less, because he said, he touched on this a little bit. He said that his goal is to make it mainstream, all these concepts that he's introducing, the internet culture, whatever. He's making it accessible to, the mainstream, which is awesome. And so not referencing other songs and continuing the art pop can make for some really interesting sounds. Like the 1975 always delivers blends of genres on these albums. Like you look at Notes, and like every single song is like a different genre. And I don't think it's going to be as extreme as Notes, but mentioning Notes and the length of Notes is almost an hour and a half, and he said that he wants to make this album long, which is great. And he's saying that people's attention span, everyone knows this, attention span is really bad lately. Like we're doom scrolling, name of the podcast, shouts out, and we don't have attention span. So he says he wants to make a piece of art that you really have to sit down and digest through for a long time and really think about. Like he doesn't want to make like a 30-minute album. Like Being Funny in a Foreign Language is a short album, so I think this next album is going to be quite long, like Notes. So regarding the release date, I don't think this album's coming out anytime soon. I know they've been working on the album for a long time. They were working on it all throughout. I mean, I know they constantly work on music. That's just how they operate as a band. But they were working on this album all the way back in the At Their Very Best tour when that first started. So they've been working on this album for a long time, but I still don't think it's going to come out for a while, especially if he wants to make it long. And there's a lot to touch on through this album and the themes. So I really don't think this album's coming out anytime soon. If I had to make a prediction, I would say maybe next year, like literally next year, 1 year from today, like fall. Not today exactly, but fall next year. I think that would be my prediction. So that's all the news regarding the album. I don't think Maddie really wanted to dive too deep into what the album's going to look like. I think really regarding the 1975's future, he really just wants to let the art speak for itself. He says he doesn't really want to do interviews. He even said at the end of the interview, like, this is going to be the last time like I really speak at length for a long time. So I don't think he's going to be doing much interviews anymore, especially not with the mainstream. I think he's going to be doing more independent interviews if he does interviews. So yeah, I think that's all the kind of tidbits. At the end, he also did mention that the next time you'll see me is at a show. So I don't know if he's referring to just like a tour of the 1975 or that I Like It When You Sleep anniversary show that he teased at the beginning of the year at the end of Still at Their Very Best. I think that maybe could be the show he's referring to, because he kind of said it hinting at that it would be soon that show is. And he said that the I Like It When You Sleep anniversary show would be at the end of 2024. So I think that could be possible. That's what he's hinting at. So if I had to predict, that would be the next thing that the 1975 do, is that anniversary show. I doubt it would be a tour, but definitely maybe like an LA show, a London show, whatever, like a few shows for I Like It When You Sleep anniversary. And I don't think the album's coming out anytime soon, but we do know that we have an album and he has themes and ideas for this album, and it seems like it's pretty fleshed out so far. So we definitely have an album that seems quite complete as of this moment, but I still don't think it's going to release for a long time. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments down below. What do you want from the next 1975 record, and what do you think of this interview? Like, if you haven't checked out this interview, go check it out. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm trying to hit 500 subs before the end of the year, so let's make it happen.